My husband's friend convinced him that our kids might not be his, and now he wants to do a DNA test. If he goes through with it, I want a divorce. I want to share my story with you all because I don't know what to do anymore. I am a 34-year-old woman married to Ken, not his real name, who is 37. We have been together for over a decade, married for 10 years, and we have 2 children, a 2-year-old son and another baby on the way. Our relationship has always been a stable and loving one. We met in high school when he was a friend of my brother's, and I can honestly say I cannot remember a time I didn't love him. He was my everything, and I truly believed he was the one I would spend my whole life with. Unfortunately, there have been some serious cracks appearing in our relationship recently, and I feel like I'm living a nightmare. Ken has always had a sensitive and empathetic nature, deeply feeling the emotions of others. While this is not necessarily a bad thing, it has become an issue. His best friend of 20 years discovered that his wife had been cheating on him, and as a result, their children weren't even his. Understandably, this has devastated his friend, who is now staying in our guest room as he processes the news and begins the painful process of a divorce. I want to be supportive of Ken's friend, and I understand that he's going through an incredibly hard time, but what's been happening in my own home is nothing short of disturbing. As Ken spends more and more time with his friend, he's become more distant and depressed. My mornings, which used to be filled with routine and happiness, have started to change. I used to wake up early, make breakfast, and get our son ready before I'd go to work. Ken would wake up at 8:00 a.m. I'd bring him coffee, we'd have a kiss, and then I'd go about my day. In the evenings, we'd spend time together. I'd clean up while he bathed our son, and we'd cuddle while watching movies. It was simple and full of love. But now, things are different. Ken no longer greets me with the same warmth. He mumbles thanks when I make him coffee, and he and his friend have taken over the living room watching sports. I find myself doing everything on my own, from making tea to bathing our son, and I'm left feeling like a single parent. Even when I try to talk to Ken about it, all I get are one-word answers. He stays up late into the night, and by the time I'm exhausted and in bed, he's still up, consumed by whatever is weighing on him. Yesterday, I came home from work and immediately noticed something was off. I went to check on Ken, who was in his office. When I walked in, I saw him looking up DNA test kits for our son. I asked him what he was doing, and his response was, "I just want to make sure all the kids are mine before I continue looking after them. I'm not free childcare." This hit me like a ton of bricks. I was devastated. If Ken honestly believes that I've cheated on him, then it feels like our entire foundation of trust has been shattered. And if he's questioning whether our children are his, then where do we go from here? Am I overreacting because I'm pregnant and hormonal? Should I consider divorce over this? I spent the rest of the day crying, feeling completely lost. I decided to take a day off work because I honestly felt like I had been gut-punched. I needed time to process, and I wanted to hear from others about whether I was being irrational in my thoughts. The following morning, after reading the comments from Reddit, I felt a little better. A lot of you offered advice, and some of you shared similar stories, which made me feel less alone. I called my dad and stepmom, who were supportive, and told Ken that his friend had until Thursday to leave. I know it's not easy to just ask someone to leave, but it was clear that Ken needed a wake-up call. I also told Ken that he needed to leave, as I wasn't going to be the one to leave, especially since I'm 8 months pregnant, and this is my house. I asked Ken to take the DNA test, but I made it clear that I wasn't going to be the one to organize it. If he really wanted the test, then he could go ahead, but I had nothing to hide. What hurt the most was that he clearly didn't trust me, and I was angry that he had gotten to this point. I was also frustrated with the emotional distance between us. Even if we didn't have a chance to reconcile our relationship, I didn't want him to neglect our son. He might be doubting everything right now, but that doesn't change the fact that our child deserves both of his parents. As things progressed, Ken's behavior became even more erratic. He refused therapy, claiming there was nothing wrong with him. I couldn't believe the situation we were in. It was clear that Ken's behavior had escalated, and I didn't know what to do. The trust was gone, and I was left with the painful realization that things might never go back to the way they were. And then, just a few days later, everything came crashing down. I received an unexpected visit from a visibly pregnant woman who came to my door and asked when I would be leaving the house. divorce. She claimed the house belonged to Ken, and she was expecting a baby with him. It was a punch to the gut. After talking to her, I learned that she was Ken's side piece, and in her mind, she was his fiancée. Apparently, Ken had proposed to her a month ago in my own kitchen. I was stunned. This woman believed we had already broken up and that none of my kids were Ken's. As if that wasn't bad enough, she showed me pictures of them together and said they made content together online. I felt sick. This was the reality I was living in, and the man I thought was my partner, my everything, had been living a completely different life behind my back. I confronted her, explained that we were still married, and told her everything I knew. But at that point, it didn't matter. Ken had already moved on, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. I knew then that I needed to divorce him. I couldn't keep living this lie. The worst part was that I hadn't even known. All this time, while I thought we were working through some issues, he had been building a whole new life behind my back. I began the process of divorce, and I took steps to protect myself and my children. The house is in my name, so I'm not worried about losing it. I also started looking for legal representation to make sure Ken couldn't get away with anything in the divorce. Ken has been cut off from his family, and even his sister has stopped speaking to him. As the days went by, I realized I needed to be strong for my children. Even if I felt emotionally drained, I had to push forward for them. I started to move on, even though it hurt. My children deserved better, and I needed to show them that I could be their rock. A few weeks later, my dad and stepmom came to stay with me to help with the kids, and I'm trying to focus on my kids and the future. I filed for divorce, and Ken is now dealing with the consequences of his actions. In the end, I realized that it wasn't my fault. I didn't cause this, and I didn't deserve it. I still love my children more than anything in this world, and even though it's hard, I have to move forward. This has been a painful journey, and I'm still healing, but I'm doing it for my kids. I hope that one day they will understand how much I fought for them and how much I love them through everything. I may never have the answers I want, but I will be okay, and eventually, so will my children.